Good evening, Battle Creek, and welcome back to Our View. Our View is where we discuss different topics and series, and today we will be continuing to speak on the series we're running right now, which is poverty and whose responsibility it is to get you out of poverty. So today we have our wonderful Valerie Whitney, we have Dylan Rank, and I will be hosting Kayla Johnson. So today the three of us thought that we would come together and kind of share some of our experiences from life and inside the office regarding to poverty and what our personal beliefs are alongside professional. So Dylan, whose responsibility is it to get somebody out of poverty? If you're in poverty, whose responsibility is it to get you out?
Well, it'd be your responsibility to get yourself out of poverty.
Why do you think that?
Because nobody is going to live your life for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So it has to start with you, at least.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
You agree, Val?
Yeah, I do. I think it is our own responsibility to pull ourselves out of poverty, but I also believe that along the way, if we collectively use the resources that we have, and that's where we come in, is we as case managers can help those folks with those resources and show them, like, how do you get yourself out of poverty? You may not know anything about how to access a state emergency relief from the from the Department of Health and Human Services. You may not know how to do some of those things because in your lifetime, your parents or your grandparents never had to do that. So for you to be able to just say, it's your responsibility to get yourself out of poverty. That is true. It is your work. You have to put in your work. You have to put in the blood, the sweat, the tears, all of that. But you need also someone who can help you with your guidance through the resources and things that you need to use. So,
yeah. I actually completely agree with that. And that was my same thought because, like, if I think about it and I'm in a poverty situation, there's nobody else who can walk in my shoes, kind of like what you said. But at the same time, if I was never taught this or shown this or had a responsibility of this, like, how do you navigate that all on your own? But yet it has to be, you're the only person who can do it too. And if you're somebody who doesn't feel comfortable asking for help or getting out of that comfort zone, I think, like, it's almost, if you don't have that, like, grit and that pursuit to find the people to help navigate those areas and bridge out of poverty, like, really, like, you could get stuck in that forever. And that's definitely terrifying. Dylan, do you see, like, in male case management, on that side of things, do you see, like, where most of your men are in poverty and maybe, like, 1 out of, like, 10 are looking to bridge out and use your help to get to that place? Or
Well, I think we all want to bridge out of poverty. I think the issue is with the 1 out of 10 or the small percentage that does make that jump. It's because they got connected. It's because they had that drive in them already. It's because they wanted it a little more than everybody else, because that's what it comes down to. That and who you know and, like, what resources to use, who to get connected with, because that's the problem with so many other men, and it's not as easy to admit that you have, like, those anxieties or not have that grit or that grind. So it's harder to get to B if you're not willing to admit defeat at A, if that makes sense.
are your men willing to admit defeat?
Not always. It takes a little bit of digging, and it takes a couple of failures before they're like, okay, like, there's nothing else I can do at this point. I need help. So.
I think a lot of that might have to do with the social stereotype of being the male person in our world at this point. You're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to be the provider, you're supposed to be all of these things, and if one of your bricks in that pyramid shifted, then it makes it really hard for you. And a lot of the men are always taught, at least from my experience, they've always been taught, you don't ask for help, you do it by yourself, it's your responsibility, don't cry, suck it up. Right. And so for them to be able to say, hey, like, I need some help, is totally out of character. Where on the women's case management side, it's more, I think it's a lot easier for a woman to say, okay, look, I just can't do this anymore. I need some help. Where I think it just comes with some of the stereotypes that they've always been set in.
It just makes it feel more natural. Like if you're already used to doing that in a home setting, in a family environment, like, hey, I need help, hey, I need this, or like you're used to having that backbone somewhere else, it's an easier transition, I guess you could say. But with the men, it's not, because they're not used to asking for help, you know? Like you're taught at a very early age, like you just have to handle it, like you said. You don't show emotion, you just keep going. But I think that's changing nowadays, and I think that's like one of my goals with men's case management is I want to change that stereotype and have men able to access that help and use the resources in the community and advocate for themselves and make a difference.
I was listening to this podcast, shout out Dear Future Wifey. It's actually really, really cool, but I can't remember the man's name that was the guest, but it was like a pivotal moment for me, because he goes on to say how as a man he feels like he's not like a human being, because men are so like everything that y'all just said, and it makes it so difficult for men to have a safe space. So then also not having a safe space, but then having the stereotypes of you're the provider, you're the householder, you're the man, you build, you fix, you do all these things to run the house, but then you have that man is in poverty, doesn't have the role models that he's supposed to be but he's still supposed to be this, but never had that, and then needs this to be able to do these things. And I think it's really tough. I think like from a male's perspective in poverty, like I couldn't even imagine what that feels like, and then not having the comfortability. Like some women are like tough, of course, but then like to be a man and not only have to be that tough, but they are tough too. Like getting past those layers, like Dylan said, is like a minefield, and so many of those men in poverty are running those households and not having the skills for themselves, so they can't even pass them down, and it's just this perpetual like sadness. So I think what you're talking about, like having goals for your males in case management, is huge, because like again on that podcast he talks about like they have this male retreat and they all go, and it's like 3 days, and they, like he said, like it was like a bunch of babies, basically they were all crying, and he had never just witnessed men in that sort of space before, like feeling those types of emotions and feelings, and they were all crying, and they leave and they're back up to puffed up chest and they got to beat this again, but with a more knowledge base. So hopefully that's something maybe in the future, like you can visit once you get to that place. Maybe you guys go to like a crying retreat and then like
with UMO.
Yeah.
right
That
would be really cool.
That would be cool.
And another thing too, I think we need to factor into that. In today's society, so many men are raising their own children now. Like before, it was kind of like when you went to court for child support or front of the court or a custody hearing, you automatically just assumed the mother would get custody of the children. And it's not that way anymore. Now it's more equal. And they're trying more of the 50-50 type custody battles with people. And I think a lot of men, if they aren't used to having to navigate all those schedules and all that curriculum and all that other stuff alone, so to speak, it can be very frustrating, and they need that help as well. So that seems to be a big thing that we hear too.
It does. It seems like they're like, Dylan, you touched on the shift. It does feel like there's like a power shift almost. Like men are finding their feelings,
Right.
and then women are finding their like strengths, and it's definitely coming up to this 50-50 area. I won't go too far down that road because that one gets dicey. But like you said, like the women have been homemakers for so long. They run the schedules, they run the kids, they do all these things. So now either they're doing both or they are swapping. So then that same man who didn't have the skills to be the breadwinner, the housekeeper, that now he's learning all these different skills, and then he's lacking there. So maybe there is like this major, I don't know what you want to call it, like lack in building up our men in this country for so long at this point.
I don't even think it's just the men. I think it's just all around. I think it's just now that we're diving into men's case management a little more and so closely with women's, you're able to compare and contrast a little more and see the differences, like coming on board and thinking this is what I would be doing and then this is what I actually end up doing, they're two completely different things because you have to approach it differently. And the difference with like going through that minefield, like you called it, with maybe in women's case management, you might hit a soft spot or blow up one of those mines and she cries to you or she confides in you. Whereas like if I do that, I might get punched. They might leave and not come back.
Right.
Like it's a whole different ball game. And what was I gonna say? I think we all struggle like as people, and I think that it starts with our childhood. And I think that it just snowballs from there. And so anything that you do with men's case management, women's case management, I think just educating our community and providing assistance and showing where the helping hands are and just like creating that family environment in each community is how you grow like overall.
That's one thing I can say that for as long as I've been at co-op, has always been something very fascinating to me. How you can pick up the phone and call one person and say, hey, this is going on with Susie Smith or whatever. And instantly you have an army of women who are ready to assist, ready to step up and help. Yep. And now we have the added feature of some of the men in the case management crew are like, hey, do they need assistance doing moving or whatever? And they'll step up and help as well. And I think it's just like the family has grown to an extent to where it just feels more family oriented now. It feels like there's more of us. And I think, as you know, as a cliche, the bigger army always gets the bigger prizes. And I think that with the turnover with all the group that we have now, we're so much more capable of helping each other and doing things in a bigger capacity that I really think this year we're really going to see a lot of difference in things that we're capable of doing in co-op. And I'm really excited about it. Mm-hmm. And I think not that we're going to alleviate poverty altogether, because Lord knows that's not going to happen, but we can certainly lean on each other a little more, and I think we'll have a bigger shift is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, especially with the poverty summits that we plan to do. I think we like to call ourselves the experts on poverty.
Absolutely.
And I think that's because it's true. So I guess, like, what would your take be on, like, if somebody asked you, well, why is co-op a poverty expert? Like, what would you say, Dylan?
I think we live it. I mean, it's a living, breathing experience of what co-op is. Like, it started from the idea of, how do I get out of poverty? How do I have that assistance, that help that I need to get to the next step? You know, sometimes, like, if you don't have that complete family here, and if you can lean on your neighbor a little more, or somebody else in the community, then it makes it a little easier to get there. It takes a village to raise a child. So, that's what I would say.
Yeah, Val? So
I would have to say that it's 100% that we are the poverty experts. I mean, I've been there for 17 years. I've been there since almost the creation of co-op. But and the reason I think that is because if you look at who the people are who are employed and who work through co-op, a lot of us started there. Like, none of us started with a bank account with $50,000 in it, and we just thought, well, let's just do this for fun, you know?
So this experiment.
We have lived these experiences. We know what these folks are going through because we ourselves have gone through them. How did we navigate them? Well, we know that. And we have just that little added help of being able to be in touch with those resources in the community that help to educate us to the facts of what they offer and how they are working with folks in the community to help bring them out of poverty. And I think that's what makes us the experts, is that we have started, we've lived there, we've slowly grown from our roots, we're growing even more every day. And I think that with the education and the training that all of us have been afforded, I think that we've really learned a lot and that we can pass that on to our folks. One of the biggest things I say about the poverty summits that we do is just the utter surprise that some of the folks that don't do actual case management with the community, the surprise that they feel afterwards. Like, for instance, the last one that we did, a gentleman stood in the middle of the room and just kind of tossed his papers and like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do now. I can't do this because I don't have that, and I can't get in here because I don't have this, and to get this, I have to have that. So it's all about them understanding the hoops, the barriers, and the mountains that some of these folks will climb in order to be successful in their lives. And I think that's real important. And I think that's why we're there, to help nurture and to help guide them through that. Like we say a lot in case management, I know you guys have all heard me say this 100 times. When someone says, oh, I'm so happy this happened, thank you, you did so much for me. No, I didn't. I'm your cheerleader. You're the player on the field.
Exactly.
I'm just cheering you on. So
I agree. And coming into co-op, I think I just fell in love with the beauty from the very bottom, like not having like the bigger vision at this point, but from the very bottom, the whole entire reason I love co-op is because when it was just you and Val, or you and Teresa still, you took the time to know the people walking in the door.
right.
You took the time to know my story and ask me questions and ask my opinions and bring me along to random things that I was like, why am I here? Today, what am I doing here? And those new experiences and exposure to the world. And I think that is still like my favorite part of co-op, and probably I'll die with that. But I think just the ability to see the gray areas, take the time to know somebody's story and find out why. It is, I feel like that is like the relationship of it is like the very basic foundation you need to learn about poverty, because at some point in all of our lives, poverty, Alice, wealth, wherever you're at financially, you know somebody, you drive by somebody. At some point, you are exposed to poverty every single day, whether you're aware of it or not. Some of us are just more aware of it. So why not take the time to understand before you just make a quick judgment? I think that's why co-op, we are experts. Like you said, like so many of us, Teresa, starting this from the ground up, being an ED, making $9 an hour, you guys grinding this out for so many years, experiencing and not having necessarily degrees to back that up right away or anything, but getting to know the people, not just in poverty, but the people who are stakeholders and big players in the community and what they do and how they work and how you can plug those stories in to bridge from this place to the next one and love all the way along. And I think it's just beautiful. And every day there's something about co-op that touches my heart. And after I'm not even a third way through your term here or yours, a lifetime. But I think it's really cool to not only understand what the definition that Google will provide you of poverty, but to understand that poverty is so much deeper than just a number on a chart.
Right.
That it's spiritually, we can see people who have come from poverty into the next one, wealth or wherever they go, but that spirit of poverty, that mental peace carries along. So there's so much work to be done to alleviate poverty in one person at a time or globally.
I agree. I think, and a lot of it, I think, is a mindset. And it's scary that people can drive by folks that they know are in poverty. They can see that they're in poverty and just suddenly make those snap decisions. I mean, as we see every day when we drive down any of the streets here in our community, we can see folks who are homeless. We can see, as you drive by, you can see some of the encampments that have been set up. And every person, not every person, but a lot of people who have the means to maintain their own homes from day to day and not have to worry about paying the lights, the gas, putting food on the table, how to get to and from a job, how to put gas in their car, or any of that stuff. How when they see something like that, they make a snap decision. And their first decision is that person is in poverty because A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. But do you really know why? And that's what really breaks my heart is when I see a mom come in with kids, and she says to me, well, I stayed at the shelter last night, but it was just the warming shelter because it was full, and I don't know what I'm going to do tonight, and and things like that. And no, by no choice did she say, I woke up today and said I want to be in poverty. Maybe she lost her job 30 days ago and she's still waiting for unemployment to kick in, and her landlord is not being reasonable. I mean, he's not accepting that as why her rent is late. So he put her out. And that's what, you don't understand the story unless you ask.
Right.
And true enough, there are folks who are living in encampments and doing things of that nature that it is of their choice. They want that lifestyle. It's what they, what they can handle or what they want.
Yeah.
But there are others who are not, and that is their only solution at this point.
Yeah. And
So the big thing to me is always you have to know the story in order to treat or to work with the person in poverty. You just can't just assume anything.
And to have a heart of understanding that what's given can be taken, what's earned can be lost, and it can happen so quickly to any of us. That could happen to any of us right now.
Absolutely.
And poverty is absolutely, it's mind-blowing how what a big issue it is. Not even just like to sit here on the table, but inside of our hearts.
So what's our next step? What's our big movement to end poverty?
To end poverty.
Yeah,
How do we end poverty?
we all have to win the lotto.
One person at a time.
Absolutely.
That's just what it is, Even if we only help 1-2 people a year, that could eventually trickle down those family lines and change an entire family
Absolutely.
for generations to come. So even one person could eventually equal 400 people at some point.
As long as we maintain the open lines of communication, we treat folks with respect and dignity no matter where they are on the spectrum of that scale.
Yeah.
And we understand that their story is unique, and every opportunity that we can afford them, we give them,
Right.
no matter what that opportunity looks like for us.
I think that's so beautiful about co-op is we are so like bob and weave with everybody that we see, because we do have that understanding that Valerie is not going to learn 1 + 1 exact same way as Dylan is or as Kayla is. And I think that's like the gorgeous part about us. It makes for a little bit of like craziness in how we function day to day, but at the end of the day, everybody was taken care of to the best of like our ability and what those person's needs were that they shared, or maybe they didn't know they needed something and we were able to offer something and light bulbs are going off, and it just makes for this beautiful, crazy, wonderful exchange every day.
Right? And the resources that we have at our community levels and things that we have in our community, we as case managers and staff of co-op, we are always seeking more understanding of those
Right.
resources in our community so we can offer those to our folks
Yep.
to help alleviate that issue with that barrier within their life.
Yeah. I agree. We do have amazing case managers. You lead a good team of case managers who lead with their heart and come with care and gentle advisement, interest in learning more, and to visit different places. And I think that's what keeps co-op on the go all the time, because we're always aware. We know which one's open, which one's closed, who's got this, what resource does this person fit into, how many kids can you have. Like, it is absolutely wild, the knowledge.
And you
that
know
you
what
guys
the
have.
greatest part about that is some of that knowledge doesn't come from just us picking up the phone and calling another staff member or case member within that organization. It comes from some of our folks who've gotten service through those organizations. And then we can pick up the phone and say, hey, we heard you have blah, blah, blah. Is that correct? And then that's how we can help to resource through our community to make sure that everyone's getting the proper care that they need.
I think overall as a whole, I think the Women's Co-op is moving in this very family-oriented way, and I think it's a positive thing. Hope that we can pull off all the new endeavors that we're trying to take on, and hopefully it's a good year.
I agree. We will pull them off. We do have a strong family,
Yeah.
and it grows every day.
What about you, Kim?
Just closing thoughts. I'm just glad to be able to sit with you two today. I would love having our guests on with us, but like it's been a while since like we've got to sit down and have a conversation together. And even in the office, it can be pretty hustle and bustle some days. So being able to like just share our thoughts and opinions, and of course, like I'm excited too to see like how things go over for the community and how the members come and partners come and what's born out of even those ideas and what's to come in our future. And I love co-op, always on fire for co-op. But yeah, just the family, being able to work with you guys and like really just feel adopted almost into co-op.
It's just about the family. It's about, yes, where our big question is, whose responsibility is it to get you out of poverty? Is it your responsibility? Is it mine? Is it your neighbors? Is it your pastors? Whose is it? I think it's everyone's. As a group and as a whole, I think if we work together as a team, I think getting us out of poverty will be a whole lot easier if we can work together. And I think that's what co-op's about. It's not about just me doing the case management for you, but you have a team. And it's not just about one person finding you a resource and giving you that resource. It's about the conversations that come up before that resource is even given. So that's what I love about co-op. We've always had that open conversation with folks, and we've always been able to be just honest and blunt.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what folks really like to hear. They don't like the pretty frilly stuff. They like to be told as it is and where it's happening and how it's going to work.
Thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Our View, and we will see you next time.